Have you ever imagined your golden years surrounded by family, sharing meals, enjoying spontaneous visits, and knowing your children and grandchildren are always nearby? It sounds like the perfect retirement, doesn't it? A life filled with love, security, and the comfort of knowing help is always within reach. But what if reality doesn't match the dream? What if, instead of feeling cherished, you start to feel like an obligation? Many elderly individuals, especially those over 70, assume that moving closer to family guarantees happiness. But wisdom and life experience tell us otherwise. First, everything may seem perfect, but as time passes, small favors can turn into dependence, and your children, already managing careers and families, may feel overwhelmed. And you might begin questioning whether your presence is truly welcomed or simply tolerated. So how do you find the right balance? How do you stay connected while preserving your independence, dignity, and sense of purpose? Is relocating to be near your children truly the best decision? Or could it lead to unexpected challenges? Before making a choice that could shape the rest of your life, you need the full picture. Today, we'll explore the hidden realities of elderly parents living near their children, insights that many wish they had considered sooner. If this resonates with you, be sure to like and subscribe to Elderly Wisdom Story. Your support helps us share these important life lessons with more people just like you. Now, let's start with one of the biggest challenges: the risk of becoming an unintended burden on your children. Number 1. The unintended burden on your children. Helen had always been independent. As a retired librarian, she took pride in managing her own life. But as the years went by, she longed to be closer to family. When she moved near her son, she imagined an ideal arrangement: helping with the grandkids, sharing meals, and being an active part of their lives. First, it was everything she had hoped for. She cooked, babysat, and felt needed. But over time, the dynamic began to shift. The small favors she once gladly offered started to turn into unspoken expectations. Then, something else happened. She started needing help herself. A ride to the doctor here, assistance with grocery shopping there. She told herself it was just temporary, but the reality was different. Her once simple requests grew into a steady dependence on her son and his family. Though her son never complained, Helen could see the exhaustion in his eyes. His once enthusiastic, "Of course, Mom," slowly became a weary, "I'll see what I can do." She never wanted to feel like a burden, but she could sense the weight her presence was adding to his already full plate. This is a reality many seniors don't anticipate. Even the most loving children, no matter how well-intentioned, can feel overwhelmed when they suddenly take on the role of caregiver. So before making a big move, have an open discussion. What level of support do your children realistically expect to provide? Would outside help, such as a part-time caregiver, be an option? Thinking through these questions now could prevent future strain on the relationships that matter most. Now, let's look at another unintended consequence of living near your children: losing your independence. Number 2. Losing independence and confidence. Frank had always been a man who valued his independence. A retired engineer, he took pride in managing his own finances, running errands, and making his own decisions. He had spent his whole life solving problems, fixing things, and taking care of himself without relying on others. But when he moved closer to his daughter, things began to change. Slowly at first, then all at once. At the beginning, it was just small gestures of kindness. She insisted on picking up his groceries since she was already at the store. Then, she offered to handle his bills to make things easier. Before long, she was scheduling his doctor's appointments, organizing his medications, and reminding him about household tasks. It all seemed so helpful, so convenient, until one day, Frank realized he had stopped making decisions for himself. Without even noticing, His once strong sense of independence had slipped away. Simple choices like where to go for dinner or when to schedule an appointment suddenly felt overwhelming. The more his daughter took over, the less capable he felt. And the less capable he felt, the more he relied on her. This is a silent struggle that many seniors face. When well-meaning family members step in too much, it can erode confidence and leave parents feeling powerless in their own lives. The key? Hold on to your independence for as long as possible. Manage your own responsibilities, stay engaged in decision-making, and continue challenging yourself, even when it would be easier to let someone else take over. Now, let's explore another challenge that comes with living too close to family, how it can unintentionally strain relationships. Number 3. Strained parent-child relationships. Margaret had always been close to her son. She imagined that moving near him would only strengthen their bond. More time together, more shared moments, and a deeper connection. She looked forward to Sunday dinners, spontaneous coffee visits, and feeling like an integral part of his family's life. But something unexpected happened. Conversations that once flowed easily began to feel tense. Simple discussions turned into disagreements. Every time she tried to offer advice, whether about parenting, finances, or home decisions, her son seemed distant, even frustrated. She couldn't understand it. She was only trying to help. What Margaret didn't realize was that, while she still saw herself as a guiding presence in her son's life, he saw things differently. He was now a husband, a father, and a man trying to navigate life on his own terms. Having his mother nearby blurred the boundaries. To him, her well-meaning advice felt like interference. Instead of bringing them closer, their proximity created a quiet strain. This is a challenge many parents face when they move too close to their adult children. Even the strongest relationships can be tested when personal space starts to disappear. The key to maintaining a healthy bond? Set clear expectations. Offer support, but wait until your children ask for advice. Give them space to manage their own lives, and you may find that a little distance actually strengthens the relationship. Now, let's explore another unexpected downside: how living too close to family can sometimes lead to social isolation. Number 4. Risk of social isolation. James had always been a social person. Back in his old neighborhood, he had close friends to meet for coffee, neighbors who stopped by to chat, and a routine that kept him active. But as he got older, he felt the pull to be closer to family. He imagined spending more time with his daughter, sharing meals, and becoming a bigger part of his grandchildren's lives. At first, it seemed like the perfect decision. He was invited over for dinner, attended school events, and felt included. But as time passed, he began to notice something. His daughter's life was busy. Between work, the kids' activities, and household responsibilities, her schedule filled up quickly. The once frequent visits became shorter, the invitations less frequent. James didn't want to impose, so he found himself waiting for a phone call, hoping for an invitation that didn't always come. Despite living just a few miles away from his daughter, he started to feel lonelier than ever. Many seniors believe that moving closer to family will prevent loneliness. But the truth is, depending solely on family for companionship can lead to isolation. The best way to stay socially fulfilled? Stay engaged with the world beyond family. Join a club, reconnect with old friends, or explore a new hobby that introduces you to like-minded people. A strong social life should extend beyond just your children. Now, let's talk about another emotional challenge: how guilt and pressure can quietly build between parents and their children. Number 5. The guilt and emotional strain. Elaine never wanted to be a burden. She had always been independent, handling things on her own, and she wasn't about to start asking for too much now. If she needed help with something, she would hesitate before picking up the phone, convincing herself that her daughter was too busy. So instead, she kept quiet. What Elaine didn't realize was that, on the other side of town, her daughter was struggling with guilt. Between work, raising her own family, and managing daily responsibilities, she often found herself too exhausted to visit as much as she wanted to. But every time she looked at the clock and realized another day had passed without checking in on her mother, the guilt crept in. She told herself she should do more. She should call more. She should stop by more often. But there just weren't enough hours in the day. And so, a silent emotional cycle formed. Elaine not wanting to ask for too much, and her daughter feeling like she was never doing enough. This quiet strain can wear down even the strongest relationships. The solution: honest communication. Instead of assuming what the other person feels, have an open conversation. Set clear expectations and boundaries so that neither parent nor child feels pressured or neglected. A relationship built on understanding, not guilt, will always be stronger. Finally, let's talk about something many seniors don't consider: what they might be missing out on by living too close to family. Number 6. Missing out on new experiences. For years, Barbara assumed that when the time came, she would move closer to her son. It just seemed like the natural choice. Family was important, and being nearby would mean more time together, more support, and a stronger bond. But as she thought about it more, she started asking herself a different question. What about me? She had spent her whole life caring for others, raising children, managing a household, and making sure her family's needs came first. But now, in this next chapter of life, she realized she wanted something more. So instead of settling near her son, she made a bold decision. She moved to a retirement community in Florida. First, she worried she might regret it. But soon, she discovered something she hadn't felt in years: excitement. She met new friends who shared her interests, joined activities she had never tried before, and even found a passion for painting. She traveled, explored, and most importantly, she felt a renewed sense of independence. Many seniors believe that their world should revolve around their children. But the truth is, this stage of life is also about personal fulfillment. The best thing you can do for yourself? Embrace new experiences. Travel, pick up a new hobby, meet people who inspire you. Because life doesn't stop when your children grow up. Sometimes that's when it truly begins. Number 7. Children may not be ready for caregiving. John adored his mother. When she decided to move closer, he welcomed the idea, believing it would mean more quality time together. He imagined weekend visits, shared meals, and the peace of mind that came with knowing she was nearby. First, everything went smoothly. But as time went on, things began to shift. His mother needed help with small errands, rides to doctor's appointments, fixing things around the house, picking up prescriptions. John was happy to do it, but between his demanding job, raising 2 kids, and maintaining his own household, he started to feel stretched thin. What began as occasional favors turned into regular obligations, and before long, exhaustion set in. He felt guilty when he couldn't be there as much as he wanted to, but the reality was, he simply didn't have the time or energy to be her primary caregiver. Many seniors assume that their children will naturally step into a caregiving role when the time comes, but the truth is, most adult children are unprepared, both emotionally and financially, for that level of responsibility. Instead of relying entirely on family, consider alternative options. Assisted living communities, part-time caregivers, or even services like rideshare programs can help ease the burden. Seeking support beyond your children isn't selfish. It's a way to ensure that both you and your family can maintain a healthy, balanced relationship. Now, let's talk about something equally important: why prioritizing your own happiness should be at the center of your retirement plans. Number 8. Prioritizing personal fulfillment. For most of her life, Ruth dedicated herself to her family. She raised her children, managed a household, and made sure everyone's needs were met before her own. So when she became a grandmother, she naturally assumed that her next role would be just as demanding, helping with the grandkids, being available whenever needed, and making her family the center of her world. But then, something shifted. One day, as she sat in her quiet living room, she asked herself a question she hadn't considered in decades. What do I want? She realized that while she loved her family deeply, there were dreams she had put on hold, things she had always wanted to do but never had the time for. She had always admired art, so she signed up for a painting class. She had dreamed of seeing the world, so she booked a trip with a group of fellow retirees. As she opened herself up to new experiences, she discovered something unexpected, a renewed sense of excitement, purpose, and joy. Many seniors believe that their later years should revolve around their children, but the truth is, personal fulfillment matters at every stage of life. The best thing you can do for both yourself and your family? Rediscover your passions. Whether it's traveling, learning a new skill, or joining a community group, find what excites you and make it a priority. Because when you're happy and fulfilled, your relationships with your loved ones will be even stronger. Now, let's talk about a challenge many grandparents face: differences in parenting styles. Number 9. Clashes over parenting styles. Richard adored his grandkids. Nothing brought him more joy than spending time with them, sharing stories from his own childhood, and passing down the lessons he had learned as a father. He saw it as his duty to guide them, just as he had once guided his own children. But there was one problem: his daughter didn't always see it that way. Richard had raised his kids with structure, discipline, and firm boundaries. He believed in clear rules and consequences. But his daughter had a different approach. She followed a more modern parenting style, one built on gentle guidance, open conversations, and flexibility. At first, Richard thought he was helping when he corrected his grandson's behavior or suggested a stricter routine. But instead of gratitude, he was often met with resistance. His daughter would sigh, tense up, or politely remind him, "Dad, we do things differently now." The more he tried to help, the more distant their conversations became. This is a common challenge for grandparents. Living close can bring generational differences into sharp focus, leading to unnecessary conflict. The best way to maintain a strong relationship: respect your children's parenting choices, even if they differ from your own. Offer advice only when asked, support them in their approach, and remember, times change and so do parenting styles. Now, let's talk about another issue that can quietly strain relationships: overstepping boundaries. Number 10. Overstepping boundaries. Edward loved being part of his son's life. After moving closer, he enjoyed stopping by for coffee, catching up on his grandson's latest school project, and lending a hand whenever needed. Felt natural. After all, they were family. At first, his son and daughter-in-law welcomed his visits with open arms. But as time passed, Edward noticed subtle changes. His son seemed a little more distracted when he dropped by unannounced. His daughter-in-law hesitated before answering the door. Conversations felt rushed, and the warmth he once felt in their home began to fade. One evening, when Edward stopped by unexpectedly, he overheard his son sigh and say, "I wish Dad would call first." That's when it hit him: he had unintentionally overstepped. Living close to family can make it easy to forget that adult children still need their own space. Without clear boundaries, what starts as closeness can quickly feel like intrusion. The best way to maintain a strong relationship: respect their privacy. Set designated visiting times, communicate openly about expectations, and understand that sometimes a little distance can actually bring a family closer. And finally, let's talk about something that happens far too often: when being a loving grandparent turns into being an unpaid, full-time babysitter. Number 11. The overwhelming role of grandparenting. Gloria adored her grandchildren. She loved hearing their laughter, reading them bedtime stories, and watching them grow. So when her daughter asked if she could help out with babysitting, she didn't hesitate. After all, what could be better than spending more time with the little ones? At first, it was wonderful, picking them up from school once or twice a week, staying over for the occasional weekend, helping out when her daughter had a late meeting. But as time passed, the requests became more frequent. One day turned into two. Two turned into an entire week. Before she knew it, Gloria had gone from being a loving grandmother to an unpaid, full-time caregiver. She barely had time for herself anymore. The yoga class she once enjoyed, she stopped going. The book club she had joined, she hadn't been in months. And yet, every time she thought about saying no, guilt crept in. She loved her family. How could she refuse? But the truth is, being a grandparent should be about love and joy, not endless responsibility. The solution: set boundaries. It's okay to say no. Offer help on your own terms, but make sure you still have time to enjoy your retirement, your interests, and your personal freedom. After all, a happy and well-rested grandparent is the best kind of grandparent. Now that we've explored these hidden challenges, let's take a step back and reflect. How can seniors create a balanced, fulfilling life without sacrificing their well-being? So, what's the key lesson? While being close to family can be wonderful, maintaining balance is essential. The happiest seniors are those who cherish their family connections while preserving their independence, setting healthy boundaries, and continuing to grow as individuals. It's easy to believe that moving near your children will guarantee happiness, but every decision comes with challenges. Your retirement should be fulfilling, not filled with guilt, obligation, or lost opportunities. Finding the right balance between family closeness and personal freedom is the key to long-term happiness. Now, we'd love to hear from you. Have you or someone you know faced these challenges? Share your thoughts in the comments. Your story might help someone else. And if this discussion resonated with you, don't forget to like and subscribe to Elderly Wisdom Story. Your support allows us to share these valuable insights with more people. Thank you for watching, and see you in the next video.